Hey, everyone. And we're back. I am here with my awesome co-host, Chanel, and my other awesome co-host, Miss Julie. And I am Kiani, and we are welcoming you guys back to Three Friends on the Mic. Okay. So, we always bring you guys some really great topics. And today we have another good one for you. So we're going to talk about the cost of not growing. And guess what? I'm going to start us off this time because I start us off, and for our new listeners or newcomers to the team, I'm always telling my co-hosts to start off first because I piggyback off them, but I'm going to give them a sentence to piggyback off, give them some or give them some words. So basically, we always want to go over, do a round table, and when we hear the phrase or the topic, like what comes to your mind? And what comes to my mind when you say the cost of not growing is being left behind. Being left behind, missed opportunities, and just not growing. So I take it back to a previous session we did where we talked about fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets, and the cost, and we talked about how in the growth mindset, you allow yourself to open up to new opportunities. You allow yourself to possibly meet others so they can share their ideas and thoughts. We talked a lot about what the growth mindset does. And then we talked about what the fixed mindset does. And it's the total opposite of everything that I just named. So I just hear when you say the cost of not growing, I also hear that it's detrimental to your life because of the fact that it's all about your mental and what you allow to go into your mental, what you allow to, what you allow to go into your mental or whatever, and what you allow not to go into your mental, that can hurt both ways. But you guys heard the saying, what is it? Trash in, trash out, or something like that. So it depends.
Garbage in, garbage out.
There you go. So yeah, so it depends on what you're doing there. But I'm going into a rambling state right now, so I'm gonna double back and piggyback off you guys. Of course, you know that, but that's what I think about: missed opportunities, lack of growth, of course, and the fixed mindset, and just not growing as a person. So your turns.
I'll jump in. I was looking down because once you said what the topic was, I started jotting a couple of things down, and when I think of the cost of not growing, in addition to financial, because that always can be a cost, I wrote down the emotional costs, the mental costs, physical, and then also interrelationships. So, my brief thought process in the moment, because obviously we'll continue over the time we have together today, is think about all the things that you love in your life and think about them not changing in a positive way and just sitting where you are. If you are cool just sitting where you are in life and you don't want to move any relationship forward, you don't want to have any type of change, think about what that may cost you. It may cost you your marriage. It may cost you your job. It may cost you your soul. It may cost you, any number of things. It may cost you your health. Or if you are willing and comfortable in that space, then cool. Maybe this podcast today isn't for you. You keep it moving and grooving. If you're thinking about what I can do in order to enhance my life and make sure that I can move forward and have the positives of that and not have the negative effects of it, then let's move on and let's have that conversation today. So I'll kick it over to Julie.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase that I continue to go back to, which is like, you have to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? So like, that can be a scary thing, right? And I think sometimes the reason people don't want to grow is because they're comfortable, right? Like they're in a good spot, right? Like, and that's okay for some people, and maybe you're in a phase in your life where that's okay. But I think back to like when I was comfortable and I wanted my little like insulated happy place, and it really wasn't an insulated happy place looking back, right?
Right.
But I think the other word that was jumping to mind when we were talking about this earlier was just like resentment. Like when you don't grow and everybody else around you is growing, that can lead to, like Chanel was saying, like detriment to relationships, because there's resentment that you've gone on a different path. You've worked on your own personal growth and somebody else hasn't. And I think that that can be a really tough thing, right? Like that resentment can be a really tough thing, but that also shouldn't be a reason for you not to grow because other people resent you.
Can I'm gonna ask you a question, Julie, and I've never done that, so I'm crossing new ground today. So
love it.
So here's my question to you. I want to hear more about this bubble. Like when you were in this bubble and you were like, I'm good here. What popped it? What popped the bubble? What was the change?
Great question. So like I'm gonna just, it was, I felt like I was really happy in a previous job, like years and years ago. Like felt really good. And then things changed, right? And like when things around me changed, the situation around me changed, suddenly it wasn't such a happy bubble anymore. And then it was like, was I actually happy to begin with? Right? Like, was I, or was I just comfortable? Was I just in a routine? And it was, dare I say, almost thoughtless, where you just go, you wake up every day, you do the same thing and you go home. Right. And it's like, all right, this is a normal routine.
It's routine.
And I think, and we'll talk about this in the later series with like the mental health stuff, but like when you suffer from anxiety, a lot of times you want to live in a bubble where you know what's going on and you lessen whatever anxiety you have from a situation. But I think part of that is like, how do you overcome that so that you can grow? But I think a lot of times, and this is just from conversations I've had with other people about it too, is like, there's a wake-up call of some sort that usually happens when you're not growing and everybody else around you is, and you're like, wait a second, oh, it's me. Like, and you can either choose to change and grow with it, or you can choose to stay where you are. And that's where I think the resentment kicks in.
Dare I say the victim mentality?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of us know what the victim mentality is. You know, everything is changing around you. And so, like you said, you're looking around and it's like, oh, okay, this and that. But the victim mentality might pop in. So that's another thing to put out there. What do you say to a person that has that victim mentality when it pops in? Like, well, you know, they have that because they had help, like they had parents that could give them a helping hand, or they had such and such and such, you know, people that had lent a helping hand to teach them how to do such and such. I didn't have that. I didn't have people to do XYZ. I didn't have blah, blah, blah. So that's also the cost of not growing too. You fall into that victim mentality of it's everyone else's fault except for your own as to why you choose not to grow, because we do have choices. We do have a choice to be in a situation. And here's the thing, I think we've said this before, you don't know how great your situation is until you talk to someone else and you see the things they had to overcome to get to where they are. I know a lot of times you see people on the fourth, right there in front of your face, and it's like, oh, and you see their success or whatever success looks like to you. Like, oh, they made it and they had so much help, blah, blah, blah. But you had no idea what people had to go through to get to that point. They and I'll say one little phrase there. They chose to grow, and to whatever situation they were in, they chose to educate themselves and do whatever they needed to do to get themselves out of that situation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you ladies were talking, my first thought to jot down was, are you making excuses? Are you making choices? Like, what is your end game? Where do you want to be if you are where you want to be right now today, and you're like, okay, 2022, this is exactly where I want to be. I want to be this way in 2025, 2032. So be it.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? What does your today look like versus your 10 years from now look like? I think we all, on some level, have a plan.
Yes.
Whether it's a written plan or if it's something that we're just thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's the cost to you, your family, your loved ones, your friends, if you don't execute that plan?
Yep.
What are you willing to lose in that
Mm-hmm.
fixed mindset? You know, and so that's kind of where I think of what I think of when I think of what's the cost of not growing.
Right.
What are you willing to lose? And if you're not willing to lose anything, so then at some point you got to fight for it. You got to fight for what you want to keep and fight for where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you can sit and choose to make those excuses. And we all do it with different things. Like, don't get me wrong, you know.
Yeah, we do.
Justify having that piece of cake as opposed to eating that apple.
I was like, I walked this morning. I walked.
Yeah,
I deserved.
exactly.
Okay, to get
I'm like,
that
it's
piece of
been a
cake.
hard day, you know, water weight. Just saying, having one of those days. Let me just get a couple of those chocolate chips. Instead of having that apple.
Or what about the
excuse
day that
am
you
I
wake up?
making versus what choice am I making?
Yeah.
You know?
I
Like,
choose the cake.
there. Exactly.
I
That's the
choose
problem.
the cake.
I've chosen the cake too many times. That's why I'm thinking about that apple that's sitting in my fridge right now.
I mean,
But
same,
what are you
but I
willing
choose
to
the
do?
cake.
What are you willing to do? Are you willing
Right.
to, what are you willing to lose? What are you willing to, in some cases, sacrifice in
Yeah.
order to grow? What is the
Yep.
positive net of that? As opposed to doing nothing and having that fixed mindset, or doing very little and having that fixed mindset. So, you know, that was one of the reasons why I gravitated towards this topic when we were talking the last time, was we forget that there's not just one side or two sides, there's multiple sides to that fixed mindset. And what are you willing to, what are you willing to risk to just live on that flat plane? You're not living something where it's moving. You're just sitting there.
The question becomes, are you okay? Are you okay with where you are? You asked that question indirectly when you first got started, Shadell. Are you okay with where you are? Like, if you're, like you said, if you're cool and you feel like your life is great and you're just moseying on along, then hey, that's great. But if you're looking around you and you see even the people you went to high school with are doing things that you wish that you could be doing, or you see the current people around you are just moving on and doing things or whatever, and you wish that you could be doing the same thing, are you taking a step back to see what it is you need to do to be on the level or whatever you think that you're trying to accomplish? So are you, take a hard look and see, are you happy with where you are in your life? How about that?
Can I throw in a phrase that I've been thinking about for the last couple minutes? Okay. And this is something that somebody told me a while ago, actually not long after my bubble had burst. Control what you can control, right? So if you are in a situation, right, where you've got your plan and you're like, hey, this is how I want to grow and this is where I want to grow, right? But the people around you are not doing the same. Control what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, I've frozen.
What do you
Not
do?
on our side.
Nope. You haven't.
Maybe.
So just keep talking.
Are you there?
Maybe that's what you can control, what you can control.
We hear you. Can you hear us? Oh, now she's frozen.
Now she's frozen.
There you go.
Oh, look at that. You froze like that.
Yeah, Julie's gonna want to.
I don't know if Julie can hear us, but I'm gonna talk a little bit while we figure out what's going on with her screen. That's the best meme face ever. Just saying. If I could cut and paste that somewhere, I will hold on to it. But you know, I think about, you know, in order to get where we currently are, we took chances. Right. We made decisions. In most instances, we took chances. We made decisions to get where we were, to get where we are.
Right.
And I think about what challenges do we have? What challenges do you want to face? You know, we talk a lot about, in most of our industries and most of our jobs talk about setting goals.
Mhm.
You know, are you setting small goals, short-term, long-term? Are you setting push goals? And I think about how much do you want to push?
Mm.
And if we're just talking about our lives, we're not talking about work, how much are you willing to push yourself? How much are you willing to step out of that comfort zone to get where you truly want to get? If you're sitting somewhere and you're like, you know what? I don't really care for this X, put whatever X is in the box. I don't care for this job, my spouse, my life, my friends, whatever what that is. What are you willing to do
About it.
to change it?
Mhm.
Yep. Yes.
Yep.
And
That's
I go
key.
back to the phrase Julie said, you know what? We need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
We do.
It's not a negative thing to be uncomfortable a lot of the times. It's something that tells you, my spidey senses are tingling. I need to do something.
Yes.
Figure out what that something is. And let's move and groove forward. Or if you realize my spidey senses are tingling and I'm going to do nothing, then you're going to reap the consequences of someone around you or something around you deciding
Yes.
for you what that change will be.
Yes.
You know, speaking, you know, a little back to what Julie was saying, this change has happened and you've done nothing. And so now you've got to live with that change or make a decision.
Or let's say, now the proper word is resentment, but
Treatment.
the proper word is resentment, but the ebonic word is now you're hating. So now you're
Yes, you're hating. Yes, thank you. Yes,
Yes,
let's put it
ma'am.
in both.
Yes,
Let's take
ma'am.
it in both. Yes, yes, yes. Why you hating on me? Yes.
Yes. And now
Yes,
you're
yes,
hating
yes.
because so let me get something straight. And this is for, you know, I'm gonna just have to be real for my people that
Please do.
wanna stay in the same mindset. So let me get something straight. So you think that it's cool to hate on other people because you see the progression, you see things happening, you see all of this. And so you choose to hate instead of looking over to say, okay, I see you. Okay, so how can I get started in that? How did you do that? What's going on? You tell me some stuff or whatever. You rather hate if you're like, oh well, it ain't no telling how he or she got that. You know, they blah 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 blah. But you didn't even ask. You rather like not put action behind something so you can get something for yourself. Somebody else join me in this hateration deal here.
Well, here's the thing. You said hate, and I
Yeah.
said celebrate. You know what? Because if you truly people, and we're truly people,
yes,
you're not gonna hate on me. You're
Yes.
gonna celebrate my victory.
that is correct. That is
Because
correct.
if we're coming together, then we're going together. And it's like, you know what? Well, you're rock starring it. I'm so proud of you for rock starring it.
Yes.
I've seen your journey. I've seen your struggle.
Yes. Yes.
Celebrate.
Celebrate.
You know. I'm sorry, Julie. Go
I
ahead.
think that's such a no. I think what you said is super accurate. And I think too, like we talked about in an earlier session, is like make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like you have to make sure that you have people around you that will do that.
Mhm.
And I think if you don't, and you've grown up without some of that, because there were points in my life where I didn't have that.
Mhm.
It's a learned behavior because you don't even know, like, oh, I should be celebrating
It is.
other people. Like, oh, and then you're gonna be a lot happier. It's wild, y'all. May I just recommend? But I want to go back to something Chanel said earlier because I felt like my internet ducked out, so I lost a little bit. But where you're talking about like the path, right, and like where you go, I think to an interview question I was asked at a prior job, and the question was, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And my answer was very honest. I don't know.
Nice.
Risky, right? To say that in an interview and not say like,
I would like, tell me more.
like I would like to be here and doing these things.
I'm like, tell me more.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I'm gonna be honest, like if you would have asked me that question 5 years ago, I wouldn't have told you here.
Right.
I don't want to say this is what I want to do and miss out on an opportunity. It could be within the company, but like I want to have goals, but I don't want to have a fixed, I can't do anything else because you don't know how you're going to grow and how others around you are going to grow. So how are you going to say like, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing in 5 years? If you do, great, but like that's not how my life has ever gone. And I'm glad for it, because if I would have said, hey, this is exactly what I want to do, I wouldn't be where I am now. So like that's something that I think about often. It's like the person who asked me that interview question, I still like check with her, like, remember when you asked me that? It's been 5 years. Wouldn't have predicted this.
Like, no, but that's huge though, Julie, because first of all, kudos to you for saying that. I mean, because I was gonna say sidebar while you we're trained to do that. Like seriously, I mean, because think about it, when you think about interviewing one-on-one or whatever, and you're some type of way you got trained to feel like you had to have all the answers. And if you don't have all the answers, then, I may not be a great
future podcast topic right there, interviewing 101.
You don't have to have all the answers. But yes, yes. Oh, I like that. But yeah, we were trained to, because what we're trying to do. Look, it took me a long time to realize that when you are, and I'm sorry, you guys, y'all to get used to me looking up in the sky, because that's where I grab my thoughts from. But
same.
Okay,
they're over there.
Okay, all right. But you, it's amazing how you get used to going into a job or something. I know this is kind of a sidebar type deal, but you're going there and not realizing you're actually interviewing them as well, because just because it's an opportunity that, and it looks great on paper, just like we know people look great on paper, but when you get them there, not so much. Okay, but they look great on paper, but it looks, the job and opportunity looks great on paper. So you feel like you go into this interview and you're just like, I gotta have all the answers, I gotta make sure I wow them so that I'm the chosen one or whatever. But no, you're interviewing them too, because like, so the fact that you said I'll say 5-10 years ago, no one would ever answer that question to say, well, I don't know. And for our listeners, if you have answered that question as I don't know 5 or 10 years ago, kudos to you, because I was one that felt like I had to have all the answers and make sure that they knew I had a 3 to 5 year plan and yada, yada, yada. And this is what I can do for whatever, but didn't think about like, okay, I'm saying what I can do within the next 3 to 5 years for this particular place. Well, what are you doing for me besides,
well, let's tie that back though. Cost of not growing. What's the cost of growing in a way you don't actually want to grow? If you're interviewing them,
at that point, you're a weed.
Yeah.
Because you're not flowering, you're not flourishing, you're a weed. And I think about, the response to your 5-year plan. I think of it in a couple ways. One is, if you would have had an elaborate plan, that's okay. Saying I don't know is also okay. You know why? I think about, and a little insight into my brain. So I love musicals, I love theater. So my first thought was, none of us is a one-act play.
Correct.
We're all there's multi-acts to this play.
Right.
So why do you think you have to have just one job? Why do you think you just have to do one thing? It's a play, it's a work in progress. It's a working document. Your 3 to 5 year plan is a working document. Our life is a working document. And it's okay. If you're like, you know what, Act 1, I'm going to be a college administrator. Act 2, I'm going to be a stay-at-home parent.
Yep.
Act 3, I'm going to go back to school.
Yep.
Act 4, I'm going to go work for somebody else.
Yep.
Act 5, I'm going to have my own business. You can do all these things and you can jump in and out. You can have multi subsets of things. You can have a moment where you want to have a monologue. You have a moment where you've got other characters that are coming into the play, in and out of the play. It's all good. The point is, what are you saying about yourself? What does your play look like? If it's just you sitting on the stage, I don't know if a lot of folks is going to stay for that.
Well, I think too, like if you think about it, so many people, like when I was growing up, it was like you pick a company and that's where you stay, right? Like
exactly. That's why I said we were trained. We were trained.
Yeah, like that's how we were trained. And I think it's changing your mindset. It's so I was right. Like that's just sort of, it was like, hey, like find a good place. My mom worked for the same school for a long time, her entire career, right? Like my dad jumped around a little bit. But it was kind of like, hey, find the right person, find the right employer. Okay. The way the market is now, it's best if you don't. And also I think you grow more if you are changing jobs, industries, whatever. You're exposing yourself to new experiences, but also you're helping whatever company with a different perspective that you bring to the table.
Amen.
So if you continue to grow, it's not just going to benefit you, it's going to benefit those around you. It's going to benefit your employer. It's going to benefit your friends, your family, whatever. So, I mean, it's so multifaceted there, right? But I'm honestly, Chanel, that's awesome that you didn't have that. Like that's not what you were kind of taught.
I never, I would always say, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that. My parents said, great. No matter what I said I wanted to do. I want to be a lawyer. Great. I want to do this. Great. It never was, well, that's not going to be a lucrative business, or that you can't blah, blah, blah. I wasn't told that I couldn't do something I wanted to do. Now, what my parents were thinking versus what they were saying, I can't speak to that. All I can say is, as I was a growing child and I became an adult, I never got the sense there was something that I was not going to be successful in,
Now, okay.
Even if they thought I wasn't going to be successful, they never told me that.
Now, and
they allowed me to pursue it and decide on my own, make the mistake or shine. It wasn't oh, no, you can't.
See, I got you're not going to do art. You're not going to do art. Exactly. That's not going to make any money. Right? Like you can't do that.
Typically saying to my father,
what?
I want to be a singer. I said, I want to be a singer. He's like, that's awesome. He's like, are you going to go to school for singing? Are you going to go to school for voice? What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, because I didn't have a plan. I was like, I don't know. And he's like, all right. He's like, well, if you want to do that, here are some suggestions. You can go to school for music. You can go to school for music and business. So that way you not only have your skill, people are messing with your money. That was his concern.
Yes. That part.
If you're going to go down this road, make sure that somebody got your back. And if that somebody is you, cool, start with you that has your back and then figure out from there. So I never got the sense of, I can't do X, Y, or Z.
Okay, Chanel, I'm gonna piggyback off you because here's the thing. And my parents were similar. They never told us that it was just a general thing. It was more or less like you can do anything you put your mind to. That's what we were taught. So you can do anything you put your mind to. The reason why I'm looking a little like confused or whatever is because they said that to us and they never doubted anything, even to this day, anything we tell them that we're starting or we're going to do, they're like, oh, okay, that's what's yeah. But I mean, I'm just trying to see where in my mind, okay, so this can be something else that's a sidebar. Where in my mind did I train myself to do that? Like, okay, so that's that. I think that's what it is. I speak for I think I trained myself to do that because growing up, my dad is like the ultimate businessman. I think I watched him run several businesses and they were successful. Majority of them. He had a grass cutting business and that was great, wonderful in the summertime.
Right.
But what we doing in the wintertime. But anyway, that's a sidebar. But I watched him be an entrepreneur and I also watched him go work for a company. And then I watched him go back to being an entrepreneur and then vice versa, whatever. So to yours, Julie, where your dad kind of jumped around. Now I watched my mom. Oh, but here, and maybe it was like just a mixture of what you see, because of course, they support, that's good having supportive parents, but it's what you see. So I watched my dad be an entrepreneur, but I also watched him go back and work for a company. And then the whole time I saw my mom worked for a company, like her whole time. My mom was at a company, and when I tell you, she worked for 2 companies, and both companies she put in 20 years. Wow. So I saw you work this one job at this one company and you got promoted or whatever. And I think that's probably what I mimic my career off of. Like, okay, this is stability. This is constant, you don't have to worry about anything. You're good and you can get promoted, blah, blah, blah. So I think somewhere along the line, I trained myself by watching my parents and what they were doing.
Oh, for sure. That's normal, I think. Like, and I think I did something similar. And I think for me, it was maybe a mix because it was always like, oh, you can do whatever you set your mind to, but don't do that for your career. Like,
yeah.
that's a good hobby that you could have, right? Like, and then it's kind of funny because when I graduated college and I was feeling a little bit lost about what I wanted to do with my life, after I got my master's degree, good time to feel confused about what you want to do with your life. My dad said, well, try it. Well, why not try it? And I was like, because like, what if I don't do well? Like, but that's a whole separate other podcast we could do about the fear of failure.
Fear of failing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a whole separate thing, but that was huge for me until honestly, like 4 years ago. But like, that was such a big, I think like growing up, hey, you're not gonna be able to make money from that, or hey, like maybe that's not the greatest career. Like it was almost like that fear was built in from what was said. And I don't think it was intentional on my parents' part. Like, oh, don't do that, but it was like trying to protect, right? But I would look back and now go, oh, well, like I could do some art stuff and put it on Etsy, or I could like, oh, like that's actually a thing that I could do. And like
multi-act play. That's my point.
Right. Yep. So if you open up your mind, I think, to that and understanding that, like, even if I didn't think I could grow in that way, maybe I can, is actually super freeing. Like it's super freeing. And I think if you think of the cost of not having that, like it's opportunity cost, right? Like what are you not getting to do?
Yep.
Because you're holding yourself back, or it's something that you've told yourself, right? Like Keone, where you're like, oh, I didn't like,
yes.
It's something I saw.
Realization.
So much of it goes back to awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Self-aware. And let me tell you, and I'll say this, that is so wonderful that I had that self-awareness. Why? Because I'm a mother. Okay. And it's so important that I tell my kids that I not well, in this day and time, you can't be put in a box. It's look at where we are in this world right now. It's no way. It's what we saw, things from 10 years ago, or things from 3 years ago is different today. Okay. So
what about last year?
Right. Okay. Yes.
Please.
Okay, exactly. I mean, so exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I was happy that I had that realization, because by the time it was, I guess time to kind of teach my kids, they got of age to like start looking towards careers and stuff or whatever, that I gave them two options. Here's the thing. I told them either you're going to go to school and get your degree in something that you preferably have a passion for, because then it won't be like work, but also that you can make a living with. And mind you, however you want to make that living, that's going to be your living. So that's the money that you want to make sure it's going to cover the cost of what you want to live, because when you become grown, mom don't take care of that anymore. I did my part. Okay. And then the second thing I told them is, I was like, if you didn't do the school thing, then start your own business. And have a plan on how you're going to take care of yourself. But the main thing I wanted to let them know is that when you become a full-fledged adult, I'm out. Like Dad and I, we're always going to be parents as far as advice and all that good stuff, but paying for your life, that's a no-go. So with that being said, that was another thing. So I'm happy I had that self-awareness, and I'll wrap it back around to just the cost of change. In order for you to, the cost of change is not having self-awareness and not realizing some things that you have to do. But a question just came to mind. What about the people that realize they know they need to change and they're just not?
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to pause on that because I have two comments.
Okay.
What's great is you could just tell she was like, I gotta say something. I could just like see it brewing for a minute or two.
We're going to pause it there and come back to that one.
Okay.
One, I don't have children, but I know as a child of someone else that this, you got to be it on your own, take care of yourself. Yes. I'm not taking care of you is a load of crap, because a parent will always allow their child to come home.
Yeah.
If something happens to your child,
well,
you're not gonna sit on this recording and tell me that if something happened to your child, you're not gonna say, baby, come on home.
No, I'm not. That's a good question. No, that's true.
Before you go back out.
No, I will, but I will, but it is a but to that, because
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the situation. I'm gonna keep it
True
real.
statement.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't want,
I help friends that's not going to. I don't care what you got going
blanket
on.
on my heart of Keone telling me she's gonna send her child out into the world and say, all right, here's the boo, and you can't come back home.
No, but I have friends that no matter what was going on with their kids, when they turn 18, I don't care what's going on with you. No, you can't come back to my house. So figure it out.
Yeah.
So you got parents that.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
Yeah, I was
very lucky. I
could still go home.
My parents told me, like, listen, if you're in a spot, now granted, the same as you, Keone, it was there were asterisks to it.
Okay. I'm always here for you, but you're not going to use me up because you want to live your best life. I'm sorry.
You're moving from X place to Y place, and Y place happens to be in my state. You can sit here for a minute.
Okay. Absolutely. Yes.
Don't unpack your boxes.
Come on.
See, I was lucky because when I was when I did college and I was and then I did my master's, I lived at home because I was working full time and I was going to school full time. And that was the deal. If I lived at home, I had to be working full time.
Yes.
I was also working part time.
Yes.
And I paid for all the groceries, right? Yes. Like it was like, hey, you do this. And that was great for me because it helped me get through college mostly debt free.
Yes.
Now, not everybody has that, but I think that too, like if I look back at that period, I wasn't doing a whole lot of personal growing at that point in time just because I was trying to just get through the day to day, right? Yeah. Like, and but that goes back to like, some of it is how you're brought up or how you've lived your life. Right. And then it comes back to that like self-awareness. And then you go like, oh, dang, the cost of not growing is kind of high. Shoot. Like maybe I should work on that.
Living, you were being, you were doing.
Exactly.
Yep. You weren't experiencing.
Yes.
You know, and then my second comment before we go back to
Keone's
comment, my second comment was this. When we look at the cost of not growing, we look at not failing. A lot of times people don't want to grow because they don't want to fail. But the flip side of that is if you don't fail or take a chance to see if you might fail, how can you succeed?
That's such a big thing.
How can you know?
I feel like I know what our next podcast is going to be.
That's the cost of it. You know, that's really the cost. Yep. It's okay to fail.
Yes.
It's all right to make a mistake. It's okay to say, you know what, I tried this, it didn't work.
Yep.
Don't try the same thing. Try something different next time. That might be the catch.
That is correct.
But
that part.
That's kind of.
But it's you have to normalize that though.
You know,
you have to normalize failure.
And I guess in my mind, I think of when we're children, it's a normalized thing. You go out and you do something with your friends, and you fall, you scrape your knee, you wipe it off, you keep it moving. Why are we not doing that as adults?
Oh,
scrape my knee, wipe it off, keep it moving. You're gonna be all right. Get up. You're not crying.
Expectations.
Yes. Chanel. Expectation. You know why? Because as we've gotten older, and that's a great point you just pulled up, and we have to be mindful of this too. Because as we've gotten older, we have allowed other people to put their expectations on us. So if we fail, like if we fall short of what they expect from us or whatever, that can put you in a bad space too. But you do have to realize, depending on what it is, like, I mean,
we had a colleague when we were doing some training, and she said something I thought was so profound, and I didn't know if anyone else caught it at the time we were in training. I was like, you're brilliant, because she said it so matter-of-factly that I was like, you're a rock star. She's like, listen, at one point I was working this job, the woman fired me. It's the best thing she ever did for me. And it was a thing where, yes, Julie, you were there for that conversation.
I know, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Tell me later.
I will. And it was a thing where we were telling our life stories. We were telling how we got to where we were today. And she said, the best thing this woman ever did for me was fire me. Now, she did put a little beginning on it. She never did anything wrong. She did her job very well. It was clearly
I know who it is.
The woman did not care for her because the woman thought that she wanted her job. That was not our colleague's position. She did not want the next job. She's working. But because this woman felt threatened, she was like, I got to give you walking papers. And she said, that was the best thing she ever did for me. Because it actually excelled her, propelled her to her next step in life.
Yep.
And we think,
but that's a huge thing, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a huge piece of it, is like sometimes what feels like the worst moment in our lives
Could
is
be
the
the
catalyst.
defining the next stepping stone.
Yep.
You know, and I think about that because I think just because you are laid off from a job, just because you get fired from a job, just because someone says, I don't want you for whatever that thing is, doesn't mean that's the end.
That's true.
No, and just or even if you make that decision.
That's a comma on the sentence because there's or a semicolon on the sentence, there's more to come. And
for sure. But I think it's also, it doesn't have to be something that happens to you though, right? Like it might not be you getting fired. It might not be you getting laid off. It might be you choosing to leave that situation.
True
right?
Statement. Like yes,
that, and that goes back to control what you can control. If you can't control the situation that you're in and you're miserable, control what you can, leave the situation when you can. I mean, work to make it okay to leave the situation, but that's, if you are not happy and I'm speaking from personal experience, like those moments that I've lived through where I'm like, oh, I'm the one who has to change the situation. And this feels awful because all I want to do is make the situation better because I was so passionate about it, but that's not where it's going. So now I need to take matters into my own hands. I look back now and I'm like, darn, I'm really glad that happened because now I get to sort of define what I do now.
Because it wasn't your race.
Right.
And that's the thing. I mean, there was a talk show host who once said, when you're ready to leave a job, make sure you have FU money. Yes. So you make sure you have enough money in the bank that when you're like, I'm out, F you. And I did that once at a job. I was at a job where I was like, y'all are treating me like trash. I am gold.
Right.
I've been here long enough to know my worth. You're treating me like trash. And I sat in a meeting and one person said to me, well, if you don't like here, if you don't like here, you can leave.
Know your worth.
And
I got
my husband knows this phrase now. At the time, these people didn't know my phrase. When I'm done with you, I say, no problem.
I'm out.
I say, no problem.
I'm out.
That is my phrase. And I said to this manager, he's like, well, if you don't like here, you can leave. I said, no problem. Because I knew I had enough FU money to get me to the next gig.
There you go.
And so I remember going back to my office, packing up my things, putting them in my car, coming back in, typing up my letter and emailing it because the deuces had been thrown. Because you've already told me that you don't value me and the way that I want to do things and the way things have been, the way things should go. And we've been doing this for 8-10 years. I gotta go.
See, and that's a big piece of it too, right? Because you had the confidence in yourself to be able to do that, right? And I'm gonna just throw out the other side of things here. So gosh, a while ago now, a long time ago, when I left a job prior to the last one I had. So that's going to be confusing, but I'm not going to get into the specifics. But when I left that job 5 years ago, I was so broken. I was so broken because I had let them convince me that I was no good, that I wasn't doing a good enough job. I wasn't working enough hours when I was working 7 days a week.
Do that if you allow them to.
Right. Well, but I think that was such a learning experience. And I think back and I've told the person that told me this, how impactful it was a lot since then. But before I started my next role, which would have been about 4.5 years ago now, this person who was my former boss sat me down and she was like, hey, I know you're flying out to do training. I know you're feeling like, you know what? I need you to give this a real shot. She's like, I know that they've stripped your confidence. I know that like you are not feeling great about yourself, but like, I need you to remember that you are awesome. It's not that you weren't, it's that you weren't appreciated. Like, and I kid you not, like, I think back and that conversation changed the entire trajectory of my life. Right. But go back to mindset, right? And go like, what if that conversation hadn't have happened? Where would I be? I don't know if I would have given it
in your circle.
Yeah.
That knew you needed a change. And he or she knew the cost of
exactly.
So even though you didn't know the cost. She knew the cost.
She did.
And she was willing to put her chips in the table
and tie that back around
and say, spin the wheel. We good.
Yes.
And tie that back around. She's the same one who in the interview asked me where I would be in 5 years. Right. Like she like you think about it, right? And it's like, man, how one person can have such an impact and they might not even realize, right? Like I think back about that 5-year question all the time. I think back about that conversation all the time. Like, where would you be?
It was life changing though.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's life changing, but I think that's a key thing is like, sometimes you're going to have those life changing moments where it's either like, oh man, here's some self-awareness, or, hey, here's a situation and maybe I can change it. Like you almost need to feel that empowerment to be able to realize the cost of not growing, because if you've never known anything else,
right,
that's where you're going to be. Like we all come from different backgrounds. You guys know, like I was working full-time starting in high school. I was working full-time and part-time when I got my undergrad. I was working 2 part-time jobs when I got my master's. I played into the victim mentality because I didn't know what else there was.
Right.
And then when I had that realization of like, oh, dang, like I am miserable. I am unhappy. Other people around me are unhappy with me. Like, wow, awful, right? Like it's not a fun thing.
And listen, and let me tell you something, but with this, here's the thing, because I want to put a pin in that because we're going to wrap it up or whatever. But
yeah, for sure.
Just so you guys know, there's definitely going to be a future podcast. Victimization. Victim.
A lot of it is self-victimization.
I've got 5 more topics, guys.
It's not external. Some of it's internal victimization.
Yes. Well, and you know what? That's what we're going to talk about.
Stepping off the soapbox. I'm stepping back. My bad.
But that
plays into this.
It's going to be self-victimization, because that's what we're going to talk about, because it is internal. That's going to be a different one. But
that plays into this though, right? It plays into this concept of not growing.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you have to make sure, but the reason why I wanted to put a pin on it, because maybe you can wrap that up in a pretty little bow, because as you all know, I like for us to go around to give our listeners just what's your end thoughts. And I'm going to go last, but whoever want to go first, go for it.
She's like, I jumped in at the beginning, so now you guys get to jump in at the end. Well played. Well played. I see what you did there. Well done. Okay, I suppose I'll jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
I suppose I'll jump in. I think when I think about the cost of not growing, I think about a lot of what Chanel started off with, right? Which is like, what are you going to have to sacrifice almost in your life if you don't? Like, what are going to be the impacts that you have if you don't? And I think that, the getting comfortable and the uncomfortable is really just like, for me, it's a phrase that I heard many years ago now. And I feel like I've repeated, because learning something new is uncomfortable. Trying something new is uncomfortable. Growing is uncomfortable.
It is.
But if you get used to that uncomfortable feeling, it's really not so bad.
Nice. Awesome. Chanel?
So I'm gonna be honest, I got like 25 different thoughts going through my head. So I'm trying to
wrap it up.
Funnel them down to a few words. Because like I said, I was about to have a soapbox moment. I realized I had to step off my soapbox.
Right.
So short and sweet. Where are you in your life today? How does it look different from where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago? Are you the same person at 45 that you were at 35, that you were at 15? If the answer is yes, and you're cool where you are, then you live in that space. If the answer is you are different and you're changing, well, then continue to do so. The cost of not changing can be detrimental, as we talked about, not just to yourself, but to everybody that's in your world, in your purview. And so my last thought is semi-related when we're talking about a couple other things. When you're changing and when you decide that you're going to make changes, be your own cheerleader. You are your very first cheerleader.
Yes.
Always be your cheerleader. Because if you're not rah-rahing you, why would anybody else give you the rah-rah?
Amen.
So I'll leave it there.
Oh man, thanks a lot.
Well done.
I know.
I know. She really made that hard on you.
But the thing is, she just gave me a lot of thoughts. Okay, geez. Okay. Okay, but to keep it sweet. So as always, everything that my co-host said. Okay, and just my
I'm gonna
little
let you have
piece.
that today. I'm gonna let you have that today because you started out. So we're gonna give you that today.
Then we're gonna let it go.
Okay. And then just to add my little piece onto it, the cost of not growing is missing out on living a fulfilling life where you are truly living in your purpose. That's pretty much that's what I have. But of course, you know, I got a quote.
I was waiting for it. Hit us with it.
All right. So a person can grow only as much as his horizon allows him to do so. John Powell. Over and out. That wraps us up. That's right.
Love it.
So thank you guys. A big thanks to our audience for joining us today. And of course, join us again as we come up with an awesome topic that we definitely need to talk about in today's world next time. Bye from Three Friends in the Mic. Bye.